Thank you, Elizabeth, for coming.
Welcome.
Thanks everybody for watching. I think we can.
Now we start laughing, and that's gonna be fun.
No, you're right. Welcome everybody to the episode 2 of the Love or Money podcast. I'm here with Lisbeth Kirk, my first and only boss that I ever had in Brussels. And Lisbeth is, besides being my first and only boss, also a founder. What's your current role now at EUobserver?
I'm still the founder.
That's still the founder. The founder never changes, yes. So the founder of EUobserver, one of the first online newspapers in Brussels. And Elizabeth is really a pioneer when it comes to media. I know everything began, like I said, in a farm in Denmark. And we'll get to details, but how does somebody who grows up on a farm in Denmark gets an idea even to work in new affairs, to work in Brussels, to come to Brussels?
Yeah, how did that happen? I think I knew from very
From farm
early...
to Brussels, not from far to Fort, but farm to Brussels.
I knew from very early on that I liked to do journalism. Okay. I remember I was writing a newspaper for my sister. She was the only reader.
Okay.
It's a little bit better by now.
Yeah. How old were you?
I don't know. I could write, but I don't think she could read.
Early days.
I'm not sure she could read. So there were lots of cartoons about what happened in the farm on a particular day. I kept some of them. They kind of, A4 folded, so there was front, back, and mid pages. So I knew from very early on that I would want to do something about journalism. And I actually applied for the journalism school at a very young age. I was just finishing my high school or something like that. Okay. And then I applied, and I didn't really think I would make it because it was difficult. But I guess I was lucky because they were already aware that they should admit more women, especially young women.
Okay.
Maybe I was just clever. They didn't tell me. They just gave me a green card. I could get in. So there were 90 of us in 1 year. And when I finished, there
90,
was
you said.
90 in Denmark educated
Really?
in this journalism school.
That's it?
Took 4 years. 1.5 years would be working as a stage in a newspaper or TV or radio, whatever. And when I graduated, there were only 10 of us who got a job. That tells a story about big unemployment, also back then.
Uh-huh.
So I just took whatever job was available. And I felt very lucky I got one.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about the EU at all. I mean, I didn't care. Frankly, I was like anybody else.
So you were at the EU desk, or is that...
No, but it was a job at a maternity leave of, I think, 4 months or something, in a remote area not far from the farm. So I felt, okay, this is easy. I can't bike, but I can take the bus. It's not too far away. And I got this job for 4 months, and it was about EU. It was a critical newspaper, weekly, publishing a newspaper about what happens in Brussels and the European Union. And then as I started reading, writing, reporting, I found it was more and more interesting. I found, well, this is important. This is not even dull. The more I knew, the more hooked I was. And when this 4 months ended, they actually offered me a full-time job. So I was like, okay, I can do this. But I think when I've been there for 6 months, I already started thinking, this is odd. How can we do reporting on the European Union from farmland in Denmark? This doesn't make sense. So I asked, can I go to Brussels? That would be more interesting. I think I could do better stories if I was actually in Brussels doing it. And they said, oh, do you not want that? Or why is it that we don't have anyone in Brussels? And they said, well, it's not that we don't want to have anyone in Brussels, but there's nobody who wants to go. Okay, I said, but what if I want to go and it doesn't cost extra? Because I would pay my rent and my food in Brussels as I do in Denmark. Say, well, we're fine, you can go. So I went kind of on my own ticket. And that was a different time, I can tell you.
Yeah, how was Brussels back
French
then?
was the only language.
And how were you with French?
Not good.
Okay.
First problem.
Which year was this?
Oh my God, it's a long time ago. It was around the time when Jacques Delors presented the plans for the internal market. I was in the press room when the...
I'm embarrassed that I don't know which year
This
was
is
that.
this is in the 80s.
I didn't pass the expo.
No, I think mid-80s, around
So,
mid-80s. And then there was
mid-80s.
this document with 400 proposals for new laws in the European Union that would harmonize everything. And I remember my colleagues from Danish press and also from other countries saying, yeah, that's a nice plan. It's never going to happen. So some papers didn't even report it because they thought, this is so far out. But it actually did happen. And the internal market, I think, was a big success. We've forgotten how that started, but it wasn't an internal market before the mid-80s. And French was the only language spoken in the press room, and you could only ask questions in French. And then came enlargement, and then that changed, because then English was brought in as, I think, now the first language.
Yeah, it's dominant language in the EU bubble.
Yeah.
And what was Brussels like in the mid-80s?
Oh my God.
What did this area look like?
I
Schumann
arrived
or-
yesterday from Copenhagen, and I have to say I was walking through the streets and thinking, my God, nothing has changed here in 40 years. It looks so much the same, for the good and for the bad. There are still
Really?
these fantastic old Belgian Art Nouveau buildings in between ugly concrete buildings from, I don't know, the 70s or something. And still a lot of rubble in the streets and cars everywhere. And, it's a lot the same, I think. I don't see much difference.
It's interesting.
As a city, I think if you'd close my eyes and put me somewhere, I would immediately know where I would be put. And it's been like that, as long as I can remember.
It's not busier now in terms of
No.
people, cars?
No.
No? It was the same?
There are more
similar?
bikes. That's maybe the biggest change, that you didn't see bikes around that. And if you were riding your bike, you would risk your life.
Well,
Because
still-
nobody was...
still
It's still
like this in
dangerous.
Brussels, yeah.
But that you didn't see any bikes. That's maybe the biggest change, I think.
Interesting. So this is, now we're talking about 80s, mid-80s, late 80s. You worked in here as a correspondent for a Danish newspaper.
Yes.
And so you spent a long time in that role. We're talking 10 years?
No, I was back in Denmark. I had some children. I did some completely different work.
Okay.
Before I actually came back when I was 40 in 2000.
2000.
Yes.
Okay.
That's when I came back. And, when I was here, I thought, the way we did journalism, because I was reporting for Danish newspapers in Danish language, the stories that my editors wanted would be whenever there's a new EU initiative or law or problem, they'd ask, what does this mean for Denmark? How much does it cost?
Yeah.
Or how much can we make extra on this? And this would be the main point in any story. It was the same for colleagues from other countries, and I always thought, this is a bit maybe not to the point. We should focus on what does it mean for Europe, And sometimes I also thought decision makers had an easy time because they would be questioned only about part of what they did, whereas the bigger picture was missing.
Yep.
So when internet came in around 2000, it was big enough to basically start an online newspaper. And that's what I did.
And that's when EUobserver was born.
Exactly.
And
Out
as-
of technology, out of a big change in technology.
As you were talking, I just realized actually I'm holding a political pen. I hope that's okay.
I hope it's writing good stuff.
It's not the pen that writes, unfortunately. So and that was the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, EUobserver, which is in many way pioneered this online journalism, which is today, the only journalism that we have. So you're saying the thinking was the way people would report on the EU always came from the perspective of the member state that this journalist was coming from, and you wanted to sort of turn things around and report on things that go beyond just what matters for one member state. Is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it was also reflected in first of all, it was in English, not Danish, which is my language. So I had to learn to write decent English. And then whenever there was a new journalist coming on board, I was really careful in making sure that we had different countries, north, south, east, west, old, new, so that we got an editorial team, also that people could speak many languages. That would be like a qualification to work for EUobserver, that you speak 4 or 5 languages. Yeah. Because then we could basically, we could dig into news from a broader number of countries. We would have access to more sources, so it would enrich our journalism. So I've been the only one from Denmark.
And why online?
More or less. Online?
Yeah. Because nobody was doing online journalism.
No, because it was not possible to do this kind of reporting. If I had to print a newspaper and send it around via paper, I would need a lot of money, and it was not possible.
No, not for a startup.
But for a startup online, it was easy. I just had myself and a journalist who had done children's reporting on TV, but she was perfect in English. So it was the technology that made it possible to present something that happened here with relevance to Estonia as well as Portugal, and you could put it out and you could do it cheap. And that's the big advantage of what internet did for the media. I think that we could have a cross-border audience. Right. And it has developed a lot in the meantime. I don't think that the reporting from a national perspective is as bad as it was. It's still a little bit the case, and I think the media industry is still very national. A lot of media don't go out of their country or their language. They stay inside. If they merge with somebody inside. So there can be more done, I think, in this area. But internet has definitely move this into an interesting that match, and it would also, it was needed because the European Union was a pooling of power from different countries. Yep. And to make that, proper, and to have it also, how can you say, we need to look after what's being done, to look critically at it. You needed a press that could match this international setup, so you needed international press for international organization. So I think it's natural that it went this way.
And at that time you had European Voice was already right?
Yes, I think it was here as a print paper, weekly print paper, yes.
And then you had another online news.
Yes, EURactiv was started. Yes, it was funny because I was, here pitching this idea of doing online news. And then I met people, they said, oh, yes, we heard about this. Yeah, this is interesting. We are, yeah. And I was thinking, how could he hear about this idea? I don't think I told anyone that he could have heard it from. And then after some time, I realized that somebody else was, of course, on the same line and having the same idea. And they actually came out before we did. They were ahead of us. But I honestly didn't know that they were working on the same idea. And I think it happens very often that in a new technology or something, people get the same idea around the same time, and then they think they copy-pasted each other.
Well, it's a proof of concept.
They don't. It's a matter of something ready and rape to do.
I guess it's also encouraging in a way because you see others doing it, so okay, maybe it's not only me seeing the potential for this.
And you get competitors.
Yeah,
so
which drive you as well.
Exactly, exactly.
Do you remember the first article you ever published on EUobserver?
No, actually I don't. Because I think we tested a lot.
Okay.
And then something was published, but maybe not put out to the bigger audience. So I can't remember.
And
probably not very good. But I think it's in the end of somewhere in the archives because it's digital. We have stored everything, of course. And so we have de facto 25 years of EU history in our digital archives, which at some point I think has value. Because where is history going? And maybe the AIs should look a little bit into it if they want to know of the past.
That's true. And you mentioned, we talked about EURactiv, and how competitive was it?
I think we were very different animals.
Yeah.
I think they were very professional and close to the Commission, close to the institutions, closer than what we were. We were more journalists.
Okay.
So we were not exactly the same. They've always been better at doing business. I think, at least up to now, we've always been better in doing journalism.
Okay.
So, but I think there's room for many more than one newspaper.
No.
There should not be just one newspaper.
What we see today.
I think it's important that we have several, and they should be quality and independent.
Yeah.
The more, the better.
Yeah. And with EURactiv, I guess one of the key differences, and I think many people are not aware of that, is EURactiv was really founded as a business.
Yes.
He had a business plan.
Yes.
Whereas EUobserver started...
Had a mission.
Yeah, and it started as a non-for-profit organization.
Yes.
And to this day, it remains a non-for-profit organization, which is pretty interesting for a media organization because you don't have shareholders, investors, people that are pushing you to make money. You have one mission, which is to serve your readers.
Yeah.
Would you say that this was also an important factor? Because I remember when I started working with you, 2007, so 18 years ago.
Time flies.
Yeah, we had an interview.
Yeah.
But it was you interviewing me for a job. I remember that at that time, that's how EUobserver was really perceived, as a publication that doesn't make compromises when it comes to the editorial. And actually, there's a story, you probably remember it. Because my job was sales. I had to sell advertisement on the website. And, you still have to explain to people why digital advertising is more effective than the print advertising. That's how long ago this was. Mm-hmm. And I remember having a meeting with, I won't go into names, but it was large, multinational. And there was a person sitting across from me, and he said, look, we have X amount of money in the budget, and it wasn't a little. And he said, we're happy to invest this with EUobserver in ads or whatever you're selling. But, we have an event coming up. Our CEO will be here. So I was thinking an interview with our CEO and maybe a little bit of a coverage of the event. Yeah. And me being, first of all, salesperson, second of all, a bit naive still about how this whole industry works. And then also not really understanding the principles that you had personally, and then obviously EUobserver as well. I said, yeah, of course, no problem. Just sign the contract. We'll interview whoever it needs to be. And then remember coming to first it was Paul, and then to you, and you said, no way. I mean, we cannot make this sort of compromises.
No.
And that was quite surprising because on one hand, yes, I guess that gives you freedom to write whatever you think you need to write, but at the same time, you're still a business. You still have the costs. You still have the journalists. If you don't pay them, then there's nobody to write in the first place. Yeah. And how did you manage to find this balance over the years?
It's never been easy. It still isn't, and we've never made a lot of money because a lot of people do not understand why we say you can't do this. Why is it not good? Why is it also not good for you? I think trusting a newspaper depends on this. If you know that something is just been paid for, presented as editorial content, but essentially it's an advertisement, you lose your trustworthiness. You are no longer credible. And then I don't think you should publish a newspaper. Yeah. So for me, that was always a no-go. We have to keep editorial and sales separate. And the best newspapers in the world would do like this, I can tell you. And you notice as a reader when you skip this fundamental principle for press, you notice and you start doubting whether this newspaper is a newspaper or is a commercial something. And internet has made it worse. So there's also a bad thing coming out of internet because on internet there are no such division. I mean, you can pay everything, get everything. You don't know what's what. Now, soon you don't even know it's true anymore. So trust and this division, I think, is maybe the gold we are sitting on as quality newspapers, that people know we don't mix these two things up. And the best newspapers, some of them would even have like editorial team on one level in the building, sales in another level, so you don't meet at the coffee bar or in two separate, places to make sure that this is not mixed up.
Church and state.
Yeah. But of course, it's becoming more difficult because I do think that a lot of the advertisers don't understand why we have this. They think we're foolish, that we don't accept this nice money. They don't see the long perspective and the ethicals in it. But you can sell your soul once only.
I guess that's what changed with digital, because back in the days, you went and you bought a newspaper.
Yes.
So you voted
Yes.
with your money.
Yeah.
And for journalists, it was fairly straightforward. They knew who they were working for.
Yes.
They were working for the people that were willing to pay them to do their job. With digital and all the news becoming free, all of a sudden you just need to rely strictly on advertising. And this is, I think, where this challenge was born. And I'm not sure even to this day they've been fully solved. And
Hasn't.
perhaps, I think we would agree that you have a certain crisis when it comes to legacy media, whether it's TV or newspaper at the moment. I think that's a result of people losing trust, and people lost trust because they knew that the journalism that they were consuming was funded by specific interests. And in a way, it's almost, you can say that the media has shot itself in the foot over the last 25 years.
Yeah. That's first of all why I thought having an ASBL as the legal owner of EUobserver was the best thing to do, because it does mean we can't be sold or bought. It doesn't belong to a private person, because it is tempting if you can put something on the front page and make $1 million. You have to have a very, very good person in charge to not at some point do it.
Yeah.
But if you are not privately owned, or the risk that you give in is smaller, I think. But I think the media is in crisis. Journalism is in crisis.
Legacy. I mean, you see, if you look at the media landscape and how it has evolved, and you mentioned what the journalists of the future will look like, but how will you even define a journalist in the future? Because you look at, if you look at, I don't know, take Joe Rogan. Is he a journalist? He definitely has the ears of the people. What he says matters to a large number of people, because people are, I read somewhere that he has more viewers than CNN as a one-man band.
Yes.
Huh? So are we going into that direction? You see a lot of legacy media, at least in my opinion, picking a side politically a lot more than it was the case 10, 15, 20 years ago. Because before, even though you had the left-leaning or the right-leaning newspapers, people, there was still at least an attempt to show the other side, or to give the other side a voice. Today, I mean, I don't see that anymore. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's not good. I don't say that what journalists are doing today is completely perfect.
We see younger generations, let's say anyone from starting to gain interest in what's happening, whether it's politics or anything else, they don't switch on TV. They don't even know what TV looks like. I mean, TV not as an instrument, but as a medium. They go on YouTube and they have their podcasters. They go on TikTok and they watch what the algorithm serves them. And then the more you watch it, the more you get of the same content. And then that's why you have such a polarized atmosphere in society today. And,
yeah, I mean, maybe we have to go through this before we realize that there's something missing.
Yeah.
I mean, it has happened already in many local communities where there used to be 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 newspapers. Now there's none left. So we talk about deserts for news. Things can happen in my local area and it's not reported, and it comes as a big surprise to most people because they didn't hear about this big project coming because there were no journalists in the local council covering what's happening. I've heard mayors saying, I'm actually missing those old days. I didn't like the journalists because they asked difficult questions. But I'm missing them because now nobody is asking any questions and nobody knows what we're doing. And that is already a problem, I think, in many, many, many local communities. Because newspapers today, maybe each country has a few, 10, I don't know how many. Some countries have maybe only a handful left.
And that's now.
And that's going to be even. So there will be lots of things going on that we don't know about or don't read about. And then we maybe have to filter the social media to find something which is then not verified. I hope at some point we will wake up and say there's something missing here. Yeah. Because, of course, how can he do his job as a mayor if nobody knows what he's doing and doesn't discuss it? Maybe they don't know him at the next election because they've never seen him in any context. So, I mean, it's so interlinked with the democracy as well. But, you know, it's up to people. I can't solve the problem.
Yeah. No,
I
it
can't.
has to come from the bottom
Yes.
up, basically. I think there will be a credibility. And going back to Joe Rogan or anybody who has established this media brand that's connected to a person, I think the reason why they're successful is because they manage to build something that the newspaper said back in the day, which is trust.
Yes, and they're also entertaining. I mean, that's also part of it. That
True.
news has also, it cannot be boring, it cannot be long, it cannot demand that people read a lot of text. I mean, it has come down to being very short and very entertaining, and some things happening in the world is just not possible. You can't put it into that formula. So then we just don't know about it. We become more stupid. What I like still about reading a real newspaper on a Sunday when I have a little extra time, because I admit I don't have the time to do all this reading anymore. I don't know if I did it. I did it in the past, but I don't know where time is now. But it's not in a printed newspaper. But I do like when I once have one to just fly through it and suddenly I see something that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
It's been put to me from somebody who found it somewhere, and something I had no idea about comes to me, and I'm saying, oh, this is cool, this is great, I'm happy that I now know this. And without a newspaper, I wouldn't have an idea, and I wouldn't miss it.
Right.
Because you don't know what you're missing out on.
Yeah, because you get what the algorithm serves you these days.
Yes,
right?
yes.
That's
Yeah. So I don't know what's going to be of journalism or how it's going to develop, but we are thinking about it hard. But it's been like that for 25 years, that the media business was disrupted over and over again.
Yeah. And it still hasn't, I mean, EUobserver has subscriptions, and I think you were one of the first ones to introduce subscriptions when it comes to Brussels.
Yeah.
Trying to go to these old ways of actually knowing who you work for, which are your subscribers, the people that pay for content. So now pretty much every major media outlet has some form of a subscription or paywall.
Yeah.
So that's an attempt, I think.
But I think the EU is maybe still too small or too narrow, even though it's a big, powerful setup. It's not something, if you have had a full day work, you have children, you need to cook and clean and put them to bed, and then finally you end up in your sofa, 5 minutes to 10. You don't read a big story about something in Brussels.
No.
You flatten out to something easy. So that's why I think having the people who would pay to read EUobserver would still be, in a way, professionals, either because they are in the academic world or politicians themselves or working in the institutions or think tanks. It would be somehow professional, I think. It's not something you read for the fun.
For fun.
Sorry.
Yeah. I agree. I wanted to go back a bit to the whole structure of EUobserver and the independence element, which I know you personally always put a lot of focus on. And we talked about the funding side of things and how this mission to be independent makes it challenging to run a business.
Yeah.
But I also know that there were a lot of pressures over the years in terms of what you publish and how you publish. So not connected to funding, but perhaps political pressures or lawsuits, which and so I don't know how much can you talk about these sort of things, but I do know that.
Well, it has a name now. In the beginning, when it's actually has stopped. It was something that came, I can't remember exactly how many years ago, we started noticing that stories we published were challenged. And it had links very often to oligarchs, I have to say.
Russian oligarchs.
And I think the culture that you can put pressure and then you have your will was then coming to Brussels. It had not been there before. And now it has a name. It's called SLAPS.
Okay.
Because
very illustrative.
Yeah, SLAPS. Yeah, and it's simply on a small company like EUobserver. If you are threatened with a court case, it can cost you so much money that you go bankrupt. And these people have a lot of money, so they can take you to court and hire the best lawyers to challenge you in court. We always had this procedure that we ask, is something wrong? Because we are human beings. We might do a mistake. What is it that what is in this article is wrong? Tell us. Then we would like to correct, of course, and bring a correction. We've also done that always. When something is corrected in EUobserver, we post a note so you can actually go back and see what was changed. But some of them just said, no, there's nothing wrong, but we don't like the article. And that was a new concept for me, and we never did that.
But can they sue you on this basis?
Yeah, actually they can.
Yeah.
And it can actually, you can take anyone to court. We'll see what the courts do about it, but you need to hire a lawyer. And while the story is up there, you need to make sure that you haven't harmed any business interests. There's a lot of law around publishing when it's a newspaper. We cannot publish things that are wrong. We have to be responsible as an editor-in-chief, personally responsible. The reporter is responsible. So we had a lot of problems with this over some years, but we never lost a court case. And most of them simply backed off when they realized that we were not going to remove this article. They backed off and never took us to court. But it took a lot of fight that nobody has really been seeing or giving us credit for. Then the commission actually took it up. I mean, we pushed them a lot. Also, other journalists did so on journalist organizations saying this is, and then they kind of stopped. When it took to the level of the EU Commission, then it stopped. So it's been some time since we had this SLAPS, for EUobserver at least. But it was not it took a lot of my time for years to fight this off and stay out of, having to spend my savings on paying some fine.
But of course, this is not a situation you want to find yourself in. But at the same time, when your mission is journalism, as it should be, I guess it's also a testament that you're doing a good job.
Yep. Right? Sure. And that you hold to it. Yeah. That you have to make this decision with yourself, at least, that you're not going to give in. Then you'd rather be dead. Yeah. As easy as that. And so far we are still alive. Yeah. They didn't manage to close us. But it was also, I think, two worlds meeting, two different concepts of press. Because of internet, they suddenly clashed, and other political events that happened, and money floating around, and so, yeah.
On that, was there ever a story that you really wanted to publish but couldn't?
There's been many, and I can't tell you, of course, because you need to be very sure that you can back up your article with evidence, because you have to think all the time. This story might end up in a court case. Right. What can you present to the judge that will convince him that what you published is correct? What makes me really frustrated is that all this is not being enforced on the social media.
Right.
Because I don't see the big difference in EUobserver publishing something online and somebody else publishing something online. Why do we have to adhere to these principles and the others don't? I think we need to do something here.
Right.
That would help the press, the real journalism, that we got some thinking into how can we police the social media in the same way and keep it ethical, keep it clean, as we done with the press. And why it wasn't like this always with the printed press. When that was invented, people were also publishing all kinds of rumors and slander and not, what we see in the internet a lot, it happened at the times of Gutenberg and the first 100 years after we had print press. Then came censorship. That was too much. And then we ended up with some sort of press regulation that you can publish what you want, but you have to be responsible.
Right. So you went from one extreme to another extreme.
Yeah, and it took hundreds of years. And I think we have to pick up that again and see, okay, now with the internet and social media in particular, we've maybe gone too far without having any kind of regulation. And we have to come to some sort of principles. And you have to stand by what you publish. You can't just do it. I know the platforms have always said, well, we're just like a telephone company. We are not responsible for what people say in the phone. We're not publishers. But frankly, they are.
Yeah.
And they should adhere to the same principles as the media. And when you publish something online, you should face trial, face court if it's not correct.
If not the companies, then at least people publishing. Yeah?
Whoever pushed the print button.
Yeah.
I think we need that to save our sanity and our democracies. We have to do something there. And I don't see why we can't do it. We can do it here. We don't need to regulate the social media. We can just start taking people to court when they publish something that's not correct.
People, I think, used to think a lot more critically than today's generations. Well, it was my grandpa during the wars in Croatia and Bosnia. What he used to do, he had a satellite dish. So he used to watch the Croatian evening news, he used to watch the Serbian evening news, he used to watch the Bosnian evening news.
Yeah.
And I was a kid. And I said, why? Are you crazy? I didn't understand.
You're stupid. You need to have things 3 times.
And he said, no, because all of them, it's 10-15% facts, 80%, 85% propaganda, spin.
Yeah.
So I watch all 3, and then I separate. I see what the facts are. I put the facts together. I separate the propaganda, and then at least I know what's happening.
Yeah.
But today, I mean, to have somebody go through this process, I think it's unimaginable. And I wonder if we talked about things changing from bottom up, whether the answer is education and teach.
I don't know what the future...
And consume critically, That's,
I don't know what the young generations will conclude about this. But if the problem is that if you don't know something, you don't know it, and you don't feel that you have a problem.
True.
So it's not something that can be fixed easily, I think. On the other hand, I find that young people actually do know a lot of things. Maybe it's not the same things, but they have, and they do find information. And I think they also learn that they need to filter, and they may get smarter at this. And we will find ways to verify what is fake and what is not fake. And we will need these skills, I think, even more in a future with AI, where this will be even more challenging, how to see what's right and what's wrong, what's fake, what's real as human beings. I don't know if we will be able to, because it's a huge challenge to see it. I start myself a little bit when I look at something. I've started lately to say, is this right?
Yeah.
Can I figure out if there's a mistake in the photo? Is there something that is blurred? Is this fixed? I don't know. Maybe we should have a label soon that is like, this is without AI additives. This is pure journalism or something. Like when we realized that the food was poisoned with chemicals and fertilizers and conservation, whatever. And we realized, this is maybe not so good to eat a lot of this stuff. And then we started looking for a label with biological, just because we wanted pure and clean food. And we saw the downside of the chemicals basically used in the farms. Maybe we'll see the same in the information area, that we need a label to say, okay, this is pure, this is not AI generated.
No, it's actually sort of having,
some organization that we can get a stamp. This product is verified by
the
something.
question always is, who puts this stamp? And
Yes.
It's such a polarized society.
Just like with the bio labels, I think it's a good example. But actually, we have come to labels that we trust, and that are. I do trust them. If it says organic, I believe it is organic, unless it's a label I never saw before. Then I'm probably also a little bit skeptical. But we will need this kind of help, I think, as consumers, also when it comes to online content.
And have you seen, obviously the reason, I guess, one of the things that drives you and what drove you into journalism is making impact. Is there one example of where you saw that what you worked on or EUobserver worked on really had a concrete impact at a larger scale?
Yeah, I think there's been many. I don't think I can mention one that was a lot different from any other.
So you do have that.
Yes, and I think it's also
reward, basically.
Yes, I mean, yeah, I think for me personally, I'm just very curious to see how things work, to get into the machinery and see how they really work. Other journalists are more investigative and want to reveal when something is not correct. I know that's a good story. There are different journalists as well. Journalism is not one thing. There is people who report sport. That's very different from reporting EU lawmaking, perhaps. So journalism is many, many different types of journalism. But it is a lot about going out in the real world, in my view, and talk to real people. And that's maybe also something that we as journalists should keep doing, because the AIs won't do that.
Lisbeth, you're a very interesting person. And there are other things that I want to talk about, not just media. But perhaps as a last question when it comes to media, or maybe two questions. Or maybe one of them, I just don't know which one is better. But let's put it this way. If you were starting over EUobserver now, now it's 25 years.
Yeah.
We're going to celebrate in September. I remember the 10 years anniversary.
Yeah, that was
21,
fun.
Yeah, 20th one.
I think you organized it.
Yeah, I was involved.
It was a good party.
Exactly. Good stories. If you were to do it over again, what would be one thing that you would do differently? Or would you do anything differently?
Yes, I think I would focus more on business.
Okay.
Because I can see that we have been alive for 25 years, but we've always been struggling with our money, with our financials. And actually, personally, I spend too much time on that instead of journalism. And that's not as it should be. So if we had had a more solid business model from the beginning, maybe we could have done better. On the other hand, it's been difficult to develop a good business model because it's been a business that's been disrupted over and over again. And AI is going to disrupt it one more time. So I don't know if it could have been done differently. When you don't surrender to the paid content and the dirty tricks to get money, or you cater, because that's the business model that does live in the best at the moment, is when you go focused to report areas where you know there is a paymaster. Which means we are actually having too much reporting, in my view, on the business of, for example, banking, pharmaceuticals. We will probably soon have defense everywhere because there's money. Agri-food, transport, these vertical topics, there is payment out there. There are clients who will pay for this. So that's where the newspapers put their eyes and ears. But that's not the whole society. So there's a lot of areas that are undercovered, a lot. And I think that's where we have spent our focus, but there's no paymaster. That's the problem. And I'm not sure I would change that because I don't really think there is a lack of reporting on banking or business.
Frankly, I don't think you could change that because if you look at the founding principles
Yes.
of EUobserver and your personal values, I think you would have to compromise on them.
Yeah, probably.
And then
Yeah.
then it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So
So what we have, I think, almost the only ones reporting properly is the more soft issues like migration, foreign affairs, social issues, labor issues, transparency, rule of law, topics that are without a professional paymaster. And that has a cost. We don't make the money that we could if we moved our focus to the other focus areas. But they're covered very well already. So I also don't see the point in doing it once over and again.
And if you looked at the media landscape today and being the way it's polarized and everybody's taking place on a certain side, where do you see EUobserver
In this?
in that kind of a spectrum? Because when you talk to a lot of people in Brussels, people will say, yes, EUobserver is positioning itself as more left-leaning, like the Guardian of EU affairs.
Yeah.
Is that result
think
of a
it's-
strategy, or is it just how people
think-
like to put things in
Yeah,
certain
but I also
boxes?
think journalists very often are critical people. We do not do our journalism to sort of make the EU leaders look nice. I mean, we're not a promotion.
Yeah.
We're not promoting them. We're more critical, asking them the questions that they may not like so much because they're difficult to answer. Or maybe there's something that is not right. And these are the questions we ask, and they're critical questions. And that often appears like left-wing. But there are also newspapers who might ask these questions, and they are now labeled as right-wing as well. But it's essentially because we're asking the critical questions. And then I think it comes down to the people working in a newspaper.
Individuals.
Yes, I mean, whoever you are, if you work on a topic for many years, you get deep into it, and you will have a personal opinion, and that will come across. It doesn't mean you can't report somebody with another opinion, but there is a personal element in this as well, and I don't think we should hide that. We should stand by it and say this is how it is, and hopefully there are journalists starting from another perspective. That's why we need to have more than one newspaper.
Yeah, to have this.
But there is a personal element in it as well.
Yeah. You can't escape that.
Yeah, if you're paid to do something else, maybe you can put yourself away.
Maybe if the AI replaces the
But
journalist.
we don't pay people to have certain opinions. It's a very, in that sense, the editorial is a free space where you have a lot of impact on what you do
Yeah.
and what stories you think should be covered and where you should spend your time.
Yeah.
It's free. There's a lot of freedom in this, in our editorial room, maybe more than in many other places.
So in these individual voices, they come to surface as well.
Yes. Which also give journalism that is maybe more like engaged.
Yeah. I want to talk a bit. I mean, EUobserver is a political online media, and I know politics is something that has kept your interest, at least for the last, what did you say, mid-80s? So how long is that? We won't go into years.
2/3 of my life at least.
Yeah, and then particularly EU politics. And I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it is, as somebody who's been covering the EU affairs and what's happening in Brussels for so many years, what would you say is the main misconception or misconceptions that people have about the EU and how it works? As a,
This, I think
machine.
It's this elite concept, which is easy to throw when you don't know anything about it.
Right, but you don't think it is?
I think also it's difficult jobs that we ask human beings to do. I mean, top politics is not easy.
Yep.
It's demanding, and you have to be almost a saint or an angel at the same time in your private life and with your private. And there's a lot of you ask a lot of people who go to the top of politics, clean hands and stuff like that. On the one side, on the other side, power does corrupt people. If you sit there too long, yeah. So, and it's not easy to go into, I mean, we are not, even as journalists, things have become more difficult because before we could get really close to the politicians, we could, hang around at the summit, we could talk directly. you would get a much better, maybe also off-the-record information from the minister himself. Today, it's much more filtered. You can't, for security reasons, you can't get one-to-one very often. So you go through intermediates like spokespeople. There's a lot of spokespeople these days who filter information, which makes the job as a journalist also difficult, and it also makes the politicians becoming some distant personalities that we don't know
Everybody
as well.
Sounds but
and something is, of course, lost in that process.
could you make an argument that that's one of the reasons why you have such a rise of populist parties across the world as well? Is that because one of the, let's say, USPs for a lot of these parties and politicians, we can say is that they're not always in power or winning elections, but if you just looked at the trend, it's more than obvious. Even if you look at the current European Parliament, it's very different than what it was 15, 20 years ago. Right? So the trend is there. And one of the, let's say, USPs, if we use the business terminology, is that they're authentic, that they speak the language of the people, that they address the concerns of the people. And, there's a big contrast between that and what you're saying, that mainstream politicians, everything is filtered through the spokespeople and everybody ends up sounding the same, looking the same, and people do want individuals, people with some spice about them.
I don't think that's the reason why the populism is on the rise.
Okay.
I don't really know what is the reason, to be honest. For example, if you go 30 years back, the left-wingers would go forward and young people would always be left-wing. Why? After the 68 revolution or whatever it was, it seemed that the left-wingers had a huge growth. And why did it happen in the 68, 70s like that? New parties were formed. We had a Green Party suddenly. Now we have the populists coming in from what we describe as the right. I don't even know sometimes if there's a left and right. And I find it difficult to put parties into this line because I think it's a little bit...
Depends on the issue.
It's not very precise. So I think it's something else that makes the populism and the right-wingers grow. It's not just because of what they say or what they do. There's something else. But I can't really tell you what it is.
But
it's just... Maybe time is like this, that there's a wave coming, then there's another wave coming.
I can tell you, I mean, I have a theory on that, but it could just be a theory. And I looked at it, I mean, my whole life I'm in business development and sales. And what I've learned, you can never make a sale until you identify what was the pain point of the person that you're selling to. And that was always, a big part of my approach. Sit there and let people talk and ask a lot of questions. And then understand, that there's an overlap between the problem this person has and something that I'm selling at that point of time. And that's where I try to make the connection. And then this is when it resonates with people. And the way I see it, what happened with mainstream politics is they stopped listening and they lost a sense of what people were concerned about. To give you a more concrete example, let's say the whole green agenda, right? If you can call it that way. Very important, but from a perspective of an average voter that struggles to make the ends meet for whatever the reason is, it's not a topic for you to connect with that person. I mean, everything starts with personal security, feeling secure. Then it starts with economic security, then your health. And then once you have all of these things covered, then we can talk about more, let's say, broader things, which are important, but from a perspective of an individual person, not so important. And I feel that these populist parties managed to fill that gap and really appeal to these people
But it's maybe also something else, that we are living in a part of the world where we are actually quite well off compared to the rest of the world. If you go back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, you'd still feel that we were we were having progress. Things would be better than they were before.
Yeah.
Now we're in a situation where we probably see that those coming after us won't have it as good as we have. They won't have the same resources and opportunities as we have. That's maybe more where I see that you have the room for populism to come in, because people are unhappy with this, that the progress doesn't keep going on forever. It seems to have peaked. And then we look for something else that we can keep growing. And for sure, we won't keep growing, I think. And also the way we organize our society, more people are falling out of the social welfare systems. And I think that's where maybe the populism is growing from.
I see.
And people just hope, maybe that can think like, okay, if I vote for this, maybe something will get better. That's why they voted for.
Yeah.
And see, maybe it doesn't get better. So what's going to happen next time? I mean, after all, if you're a normal person, as I said before, working, having your duties in life, you don't have much time left for the politics. So you go and vote and hope it's going to make a difference. But I think people are pretty disillusioned about how it goes, because we don't keep growing forever. And that has fueled us for the start of the EU. It was always getting better and better and better, and the EU was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it seems a little bit stuck.
Yeah.
And then people start getting unhappy, which is maybe not the right thing to do.
Times are changing, that's for sure. And I wonder, do you think the way the EU is organized at the moment, by organized I mean the Lisbon Treaty and how the institutions function, do you think it's fit for the times that we're living in? Or do you think it's time for another treaty? It's been 25 years. Well,
yes, and something else has changed, because I remember back then there was real, people were very enthusiastic about setting up the European Union and doing this new experiment of pooling the power and making laws in common, and they saw that this was the way forward.
Right.
So now we've done that, more or less in all areas, and something has come out of it, but it's not still a perfect world. And then you can say, but that's because the EU doesn't function. And you need to change the treaty. It's hard to change the treaty. I don't think that's going to work easily. We have to work with what we have. But we also saw when there is a problem, for example, with Trump, we actually start appreciating that we do have the European Union, and we get less unhappy with it. But you take it for granted. I think people take it for granted, and there is not this public movement pushing to have a big change of the European Union, not at the moment. And if there is not such push from people, I don't think you can do much. You have to do with what you have, the best you can.
Right.
And then if at some point people want something else, they'll start pushing. And I think if the populists at one point get into the majority of governments in Europe, which means they de facto decide in the council, that would be a new situation. And I think they will become just as all the current politicians at the end of the day. It's as long as you're out of the power, you can do all these popular statements. Once you get into the power, things are different. And you are less popular, a lot less popular.
Yeah, because you work with constraints. It's not.
And you have to take responsibility.
It's like Trump said that he'll end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. It's been 5 months. It's not moving in the.
Taking the responsibility, you realize, oh my God, it's not as easy as I thought when sitting outside and seeing how things didn't work out. I think it's natural, but maybe it will happen that we have the populists in all the governments, in the majority of the governments. And then it comes down to whether we all respect the sort of the common rules of democracy. Do we actually allow a new election then? Will Trump allow the next election?
Yeah.
I mean, we have seen that governments came to power through democracy, which allows for this to happen. And then they kind of ended the democracy, using democracy to end it.
You think there is a natural...
It can happen again, of course. Of course. I don't say it will happen, but it is a risk in democracy that it actually has this inbuilt weakness that you can actually get away with democracy through using democracy. It's possible.
Talking about the treaty, I also wanted to talk about your late husband.
Oh, yeah.
Jens Peter Bohn,
Yeah.
who was, I would say, one of the known figures of Brussels for the years that he spent in the parliament, which is 30 years?
29.
29 years in the European Parliament. And before he was active politician also in Denmark. And I know that a lot of people would label Jens Peter at that time as a Eurosceptic politician. Also, I remember with the Lisbon Treaty that, if I remember correctly, was campaigning against it.
Probably.
Yes. Probably, yes. The Irish no, and
Yes.
yeah. So he was labeled as a Eurosceptic back then.
Yeah, and he was very bad.
Yeah.
That was very bad.
But from today's perspective,
It was very modern.
exactly. So that has really evolved in
I
many
think you have to
ways.
go back to his roots to understand why he was seeing things this way. He's from the southern part of Denmark, which has been a border area between Denmark and Germany for many years, and there's been wars in this area, and it's a mixed area of Germans and Danes.
Yeah.
So coming from the Balkans, how this is a problem when you have people of two different nations having to share.
Yeah.
And if there is a war, all the bad blood takes generations
Yeah.
to settle. So he comes from this area that has been Denmark, Germany, on off, and the mixed population. So I think he was more aware of this. Now, where do we have our sovereignty? What is the country that we belong to, and who makes eventually the decisions? And he was Denmark,
Yeah.
not Germany. So there was an inbuilt fear, I think, in him to be kind of subordinated to the neighboring country of Denmark is Germany, and it is a very big country compared to little Denmark. So he was naturally a little bit skeptical for that reason. Yeah, but he had friends everywhere.
But he was very well respected.
Because he had friends everywhere. And if you needed a vote for something that was not against his party political program, he would happy help. And then if sometimes he needed help, he could always come back and cash home this favor. That's happening in politics if you're a good politician. And you are able to have friends in all parties. So he did have a lot of friends in all the parties.
I still remember the story you told me once about how the campaign against the euro in Denmark, about joining the Eurozone, the campaign against it was planned in your basement.
That was where he had his office, basically, at the time. Yes. Yeah, Denmark to this day is not doesn't have the euro.
Yeah.
But, we have aligned the level of the currency values, so it doesn't make any difference, really. But, if there was a big problem with the euro, and we saw it, that then money is moving into Denmark because we have a different currency.
Yeah.
So it might have an impact in the future.
When it comes to Jens Peter and your relationship, so you're married to a known political figure.
Yeah.
Particularly in Brussels, but I'm sure in Denmark as well. But at the same time, you're a journalist. Journalist on a mission to be independent. How hard was that?
That was difficult.
Yeah?
But it was...
How did
I
you
think
manage
I managed, but he was always complaining that he didn't get coverage.
Even though you're direct
So that's
access,
how I managed it. So it's also a conflict coming from having suddenly women taking top positions.
Yeah.
Then it can happen that both the man and the woman has a top job.
Right.
So what do? Do we ask one of them to step down? Or do we try to be very aware of any kind of conflict of interests? That's how we did it.
You have Metsola, and her husband is a big-time lobbyist, right? And,
I'm sure if you have to have a very good ethics and be very aware, more aware than anyone else about conflicts of interests, and back off if you see there is one.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
we did it. Yeah,
What-
and
what-
as I said, he complained he didn't get any coverage. That was my way of doing it.
Did it impact the reputation of EUobserver in the early days? Was EUobserver
I think so.
viewed as
Yes, I think.
Eurosceptic, let's
I
say, in
think
the
so.
early
I
days?
think it did.
Yeah?
I think it did. But I think over the years, that has changed. Maybe at some point, everybody was angry with us, both on the left and the right. And then I thought, okay, then we're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, being critical to the EU is now something that has moved far right. When it started, it was far left. So, things are changing.
And it's interesting in many ways, even though he was in politics, you were in journalism, how both of you, you have this, there's a legacy there of how people perceive the European Union. You through the work with EUobserver, him through his political work. So even though it was two different things, I think you do share a legacy in many ways.
I'd say it was a very interesting life.
Wow.
And I'm sorry we lost him.
Yeah.
But he had done his part. I think he had the best part.
Yeah.
And I have been going through his archives. That took me a long time because he never threw anything out.
Oh, sure.
Maybe that's something people don't know, but he never threw anything out.
Mm.
So if you worked in politics for 40 years or more, there's a lot of paper.
So maybe there's a book coming from you.
No. But I had to do something because I couldn't house it. I mean, it was a huge basement full of documents. So I had to spend time to sort it out, and I was happy that the European Historical Archives in Florence accepted a lot of it, because they actually found out, I think, that they were not well covered when it came to knowledge about these early movements coming into the European Parliament.
Right.
These new agendas for environment, women's rights, peace, all these things, they were coming in from this side.
Right,
And Jens Peter formed a lot of groups in the parliament because he really early identified that the power in the parliament is in the Conference of Presidents.
Mm-hmm.
Every political group has a president and they meet on a regular basis. That's where the real power is. So how could I come into this room and be part of that? He realized I have to be president of a group.
Yeah, okay.
So he formed a new group. If there wasn't one that could continue after elections, he always found a way to form a new group. And that put him in a position where he could have the most impact, at least in the parliament. So there was a lot of information about these groups. What were the names? What were the founding papers? Who were the members? All that. And that has ended up in the European Historical Archives in Florence, which is where the EU archive all relevant documents. And then some that relates more to Denmark, I have donated to an archive in Denmark, but I also threw out 4 tons of paper.
4 tons?
4 tons. And I know because I was filling up plastic boxes, and each box full of paper or newspaper or books would have the weight of 25 kilos. So whenever I went to the dumping station with 10 boxes, I would put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I knew that I had thrown out 4 tons of paper. And what I threw out was all the official documents that I assume that is stored anywhere else. Newspapers I know would be archived. Books would also be archived somewhere else. But it was a lot of history there. Interesting.
And talking about Jens Peter, and one thing that I personally always admired about you was, I mean, I know how hard you worked. It's not easy to build a business. I mean, I know it's not necessarily a business in the classic sense, EUobserver, but it is. It's a startup into building, into hire people. You have financial pressures on daily basis. You need to deal with people. You need to deal with legal, HR, finance, all of these other things that it takes to deal with when it comes to running the business. And I know that you would have the morning editorial meetings at 6 or even earlier, and that by that time you would already, do your morning exercise. And and on top of all of that, you have 3 sons, whom all 3 had the pleasure meeting, and they're, these are not kids that nobody took care of.
No, that's true.
You did, you managed to raise 3 really impressive young men. I think the question, and I think it will be relevant for a lot of people that are watching this, is how do you manage?
Yes.
And who knows me, people know I don't like the work-life balance expression, because, and this comes also from you and what you taught me early on, is saying that you have to find a way to combine the two. If you try to always separate it, then you're gonna fail in one or the other. But you find a way to combine the two, that there is a way. So how did you manage? I mean, 3 children.
I think online was actually thing that helped a lot, that I could suddenly do my work from home.
You were traveling to Brussels. You were living in Copenhagen at the same time, and traveling back and forth all the time.
But a lot of it could be done online, which was new, that you didn't have to show up in an office every day at 8 or 9 o'clock and not come back before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So with online, I saw that as a great thing, because I could then do some of the work from home before the kids even woke up.
Before it was fashionable.
I could deal with them. Then we could put them to school or kindergarten or wherever they would be in the day. I could do more work. Then I could stop and bring them home. I never worked in the evening. I was always too tired. I'm a morning person.
You were starting, what, 4:30?
Yeah, so I wouldn't do any work in the evening. I never was able to do that. But I think in that sense, online has given us some opportunities if we know how to stop working then. Because the trap is, of course, that it's always there, the work.
Yeah.
So when is it good enough? When have you done enough?
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have to be careful. Maybe put the hour, say now it's 9 o'clock and or 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Now it's children.
Yeah.
Until 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Then it's back to work.
So you had these rules that were...
Routines.
Routines, yeah.
A lot of routines. And my husband was not a lot at home because he was in the parliament.
Yeah.
So I could basically decide these routines myself.
Right.
And then I spent most of my salary on substituting myself. So I spent my money to ask people to help me. Yeah. With cleaning, with cooking, with everything I could sort of outsource.
Yeah, and that wasn't important.
So I could, sometimes I was making a calculation saying, actually, I think I would be richer if I didn't work and then did all this work myself.
Yeah,
but for me, it was not an option, because I felt that would be boring, and I'm not a good cleaner or cooker or anything. But that's also something you should actually spend this money while you have small kids to replace yourself.
Where you can be replaced.
Yes, but you can be replaced.
Low leverage stuff.
A lot of things, but you also, and that's
not the time you spend with them, quality time, but.
Yeah, but you can also do some of these things with your kids. Yeah. You can cook with your children, and then it's fun. Yeah. I often done that. You can do garden work with your children. You can do many things where you invite the children to become part of the job. And
that's even. I remember you telling me this when I had Leon, my first son, and obviously, I was 29 years old. You find yourself, you don't know what to do, And then I remember you telling me, and it was actually very good advice. Say, pay for the babysitter. I said, but they're expensive. Pay for the babysitter. Yeah. Let them do all these things that that are not really important when it comes to your relationship with the children, and then spend quality time with them, because that you cannot replace. Yeah. So instead of coming home and having to do 2 hours or chores, no, give it to somebody else, pay for it, and then when you're with them, you're with them. Yeah. And I thought it was always
but I also think it's also a good idea, I think, to put all your tasks on a piece of paper. Yeah. If I find that I can't sleep in the night because I have too much to do, and you know how much these problems can grow at night when you can't sleep. Something that's next morning may be small, can grow enormously in the night. But then I might get out of my bed and write a piece of paper and put these things that I'm troubled with line by line, and then I can go to sleep. And then next morning I look at the list and I say, frankly, this is important, this can do next week, this I'll never do anyway, and I can make a priority. Yeah. And I always do the most important and say, okay, then the rest will have to wait. Yeah. I think it avoids stress, and the routines is also good to avoid stress. And you know exactly how much is your capacity, because you have the routines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I told you. Huh?
What did you tell me?
How long it will take, and then we won't even notice. it's past 6.
Let's see how many people hold out this long. They are brave ones.
No, Elizabeth.
They should take a walk instead.
Yeah. Really appreciate you coming.
Thank
This
you.
has been a really enjoyable conversation. I think we
Mm-hmm.
covered, usually when there's a guest, not on my podcast because it's so new, but on other podcasts, usually the person brings one dimension to the table,
Yeah.
and that's what you discuss about. Whereas here, I think we tackled so many different,
We did.
from media to politics and
Technology.
and life and technology and everything. So we will have to do this again at some point, and then maybe we can do what you mentioned before.
What I
as well.
mentioned was that it's odd for me to be the journalist that is being questioned, and that we should reverse the program, and next week it will be me interviewing Filip.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe
Yeah, I'm down for it.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's
that's a
do it.
deal.
Next time in Brussels, we arrange that.
That's a deal.
Yeah. Thanks again, Elizabeth.
Welcome.
Really enjoyed it.